You're watching Business and Politics. I'm your host, Dante Klinkang. Tonight's program was supposed to be the first after a 30-day suspension imposed on this network by the National Telecommunications Commission. But as you know, the NTC recently extended that suspension indefinitely. Thankfully, the network's program can be still seen online and on select cable channels. The NTC orders were the result of a House committee recommendation that sanctioned 2 SMNI programs, and during that congressional hearing, 2 anchors were detained by the House Committee on Legislative Franchises. They have since been released, but not before our guest this evening went to the Supreme Court to appeal for their liberty. We are referring, of course, to Attorney Harry Roque, himself a host of an SMNI program, Pulso ng Bayan. He's perhaps better known as a spokesperson for former President Rodrigo Duterte. Attorney Roque's career prior to his service in Malacanang revolved around practicing and teaching law. He taught at the University of the Philippines in Diliman, and his clients included families of the victims of the Maguindanao Massacre. Later, he moved on to crafting laws. In 2015, he was elected as a representative of Takabayan Party List. He served in Congress until 2017 when he was named the presidential spokesperson. Our discussions tonight will cover politics and law, particularly media rights. We'll begin with asking Attorney Roque, how do you assess the political landscape now, and what does it mean to press freedom? Harry Roque, thank you for making time for Business and Politics.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. I think it's my first.
Normally, you're the one doing the interview. You're hosting the program, but now you're in the hot seat, so to speak. As I said, there are a lot of things happening politically. I wanted to start off with how you read things. I know it's sort of the beginning of the year still. Things are very fluid. There are some developments just this week, lots of meetings going on. Just from your perspective, how do you see things politically?
Well, what is clear is we're not sure who's really in charge.
Okay.
I'll give an example. The president already gave the order, stop this unconscionable pirma, which is the word that he used, unconscionable, when he learned that bribes were being paid.
Money,
And he directed the Senate to take the lead, either through Constituent Assembly or through legislation. There was supposedly a heated discussion in the presence of the President himself with the House Speaker and Senate President Zubiri and Senate President Pro Tempore Ligarda in attendance. And it was agreed that the Senate would take the lead. But what did we find out days after? That pirma did not cease, that they continued to gather signatures, and they have been submitting these signatures, in fact, to the COMELEC. This despite express instructions from the President to stop this pirma and for the Senate to take the lead. That's one. Now, there's a second issue. Amidst the proclamation and declaration of Justice Secretary Remulla, that contrary,
ICC.
Yes, on the ICC, that contrary to the position of the President, which he communicated to the country 7 months ago that there will be no cooperation with the ICC, Secretary Remulla 4 days ago made it very clear that we will now cooperate with the ICC. And when asked why, well, Secretary Remulla said, well, because there are House resolutions calling on us to cooperate. Now, this is the same formula used on us, SMNI, Technically speaking, the House resolutions to revoke or suspend our franchise has no legal value because it was not concurred in by the Senate. And yet, that was enough to be taken by the executive branch of government as a sense of the House, and therefore they could not ignore it. In fact, the NTC cited the House resolution as a basis for first putting us on a 30-day preventive suspension, and then now an indefinite suspension. So now I wonder, with the latest pronouncement of the President that we will not cooperate with the ICC, will the Speaker again defy the President? Now take note that, of course, I went to school with the House Speaker and Justice Secretary Remulla. We're all contemporaries. We're all friends, even from law school, even from pre-law, in fact. And I know for a fact that although I consider myself as an intergenerational friend of Justice Secretary Remulla because our parents are very close friends as we are, the reality is he is not only a schoolmate of the House Speaker, he's also a fraternity brother in Upsilon, Sigma Phi. And therefore, I could very well understand why Secretary Remulla, despite his personal closeness to President Duterte, later on, just 4 days ago, said, we will now cooperate with the ICC. But with the president saying that we will not cooperate with the ICC, will the same thing happen as Pirma? You know, obviously, House Speaker and his allies, and Justice Secretary Remulla is one of the Speaker's closest allies, I would say, will they defy also the president? Which made me think,
Okay.
is this really an issue of defiance, or is it an issue of double talk?
I was going to ask you, are you being
Yes.
rhetorical, or do you think that there's a grand design here that people are saying, well, this must have something to do with 2025 or 2028? What's your
Well,
take?
You see, on the one hand, there's a possibility it's an open defiance. If it is, the question
Okay.
is, why is the president taking this sitting down?
Okay.
What does the speaker have on him?
Okay.
Which, you know, gives a sense of entitlement to the speaker to defy him, no, on
Okay.
very fundamental and major issues that have
Okay.
divided this nation. No? At the same time, it makes you wonder, is this really a defiance or pursuant to a grand plan
Okay.
of good guy, bad guy?
Okay.
Where the president says, I'm against it, but go ahead and do it anyway because we
Okay.
want it done. No?
Okay.
We can never know.
Right.
Or is it an instance of, is the president really in charge?
Okay.
Could it be that there are times when the president, in fact, is not in charge? And that because there are times when he's not in charge, the House Speaker and other individuals
And that's
have to fill up, no?
That's a loaded question, but you have, as you said, you know some of the personalities very well. The Speaker one, and of course the Secretary of Justice. What's your take? I mean, do you know? And of course you have. I'm sure you have your ear on the ground, so to speak, talking to different people. What is your sense? Do you think there is a grand design, or do you think this is an evolution of something, maybe the rise of different forces, or something else? I mean,
What's very clear is that the House Speaker wants to be president or head of state.
okay,
He seems frustrated because this early, the numbers probably make it appear that it's impossible for him to be president in 2028.
okay, so maybe Prime Minister.
Yeah, so now, obviously, the PIRMA, with the amendment that they want being to silence the Senate, is obviously intended to introduce revisions that would make us into a parliamentary form of government and
Okay.
remove the bicameral system of legislation. No? So that to me is a very viable explanation behind this move. Why else would they want to shut up Senate on any proposed revisions or amendments to the Constitution? No? But I think it goes beyond that.
Okay,
Because number one, you don't understand why he did it so early.
okay,
You know, we're not even done with midterm elections. Midterm
Okay.
election is only a barometer of how influential the current administration is.
Okay.
Because the performance of their candidates for senator will more or less give us an indication of how popular the
Okay.
administration is. No? So why was it so premature?
Wouldn't you say that maybe it's done early because the president is precisely popular? That maybe it's, this is his time to capitalize on, a major initiative such as what we're seeing right now. No? I mean, isn't there a political strategy explanation for that sort of initiative, you think?
But then I forgot that in citing the instances where the House Speaker defied the president, this was the first issue where he defied the president because he said we don't need charter change for economic development.
That's what I
He
wanted.
said so, no?
Yeah.
So I forgot that there are 3 instances already where he defied, no? So it makes me wonder now whether or not it's coincidental, or is it because House Speaker knows that the president is really not in charge and he can get his way any which way.
I see.
It's the only explanation.
Are you surprised that, as you said, these things are happening this early in the presidential term?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I also dabbled in politics, and
Yes.
I know that timing is everything in
Yeah.
politics.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that it's out of sync, really, out of tune to
Okay.
aspire to be president now, unless he feels that he's already running government as of now.
Hmm.
And it's just a matter of crowning him as president or prime minister, as chief executive. No?
Now-
So now I'm thinking, perhaps he's really calling the shots.
Okay.
And that's why it's not an issue of defiance. It's the fact he's just doing everything as if it's business as usual because he makes the decisions and not the president.
What would be the implications of that? Say if it's true, your theory is true. What would be the serious implications of that? I mean, having the speaker, as you said, running the show and the president allowing him to do so?
Well, the problem, of course, he was only elected by a few individuals in one district.
Okay.
Out of 318 seats in Congress, he only holds one of them. Whereas 31 million people, or 30 million people, I stand corrected, voted for the president. So he does not have the same mandate that the president has, and therefore it is the president who should be ruling and not him.
Have you had a chance to sit down and maybe take a phone call or phone the speaker and say, you know, what's going on? Have you had a chance to maybe talk to people around him? What have you been hearing?
Well, you know,
as you said, you were close at one time.
Yeah, and he did say so as well, that he was. We were good friends because you know, when we were students, he had just returned from Hawaii from the exile. And of course, no one was talking to him in the UP College of Law because, you know, UP is UP.
Yeah.
So I thought, I really don't care who you are, for as long as you're a good person, I'll talk to you. So I gambled. It was a gamble because, of course, you could be unpopular talking to Romualdez in UP Diliman. No? But I don't care less, and I found him to be personable enough. And, you know, I would say I became friends with him. No? He's very personable. He's very likable. No? He's very sociable. No? But the things that are happening now are completely unexpected. No? I did not expect that he had this personality, that he would want the position of president or chief executive of the country so badly, so early. To the extent that, you know, in the campaign, and I joined the campaign of Unit Team, he was there at every rally, and his only chore was to introduce the vice president. And look what happened now. He's the #1 nemesis of the vice president. So it makes you wonder, really. Maybe they say, well, anything is possible in politics, but it makes you really wonder what happened, no? What happened? And until now, I can't find the answers.
And if we assign these developments as purely political, going back to SMNI, do you think this is a phase that will pass maybe after the critical time has gone? I mean, the election of 2025, 2028, or is this, you think, a more long-term challenge that's facing this network and, in a sense, Philippine press freedom in general?
Well, of course, what they did to us is an outright suppression of freedom of the press and freedom of expression. No doubts about it. Let's not even discuss why. Because the Constitution says that the guarantee of freedom of expression is #1, a guarantee against prior restraint, censorship, and #2 is subsequent punishment. And of course, in both, in the case of SMNI, they did both. They had prior restraint because they suspended us without according us opportunity to be heard, which is also denial of our due process rights. And secondly, we're being punished for daring to question whether or not it is true that the travel expenses of the speaker has amounted already to in excess of $1 billion.
That was a question, but we have to go on break. But let me just ask this question real quick. A lot of people are saying that, in a sense, SMNI is being hypocritical because when ABS-CBN was facing its problems with its franchise in Congress, there were some people who said that SMNI had supported that. But now that SMNI is going through a period of difficulty, that it all of a sudden is crying press freedom. Do you think there is legitimacy to that criticism?
Forgive the language, but that horse crap.
Okay.
Why? Because ABS-CBN's its franchise had lapsed. It no longer had the privilege to broadcast. We have that privilege, and jurisprudence says, particularly in DANS, that even if government has more leeway or more control over broadcast media because they own the airwaves, still freedom of expression and freedom of the press take precedence over any regulatory concern that government may have. In fact, the current jurisprudence is any suppression of freedom of expression comes to court with a very, very heavy presumption of unconstitutionality. It's for government to justify the suppression.